Hey, everybody, it's your girl Planet Ty on deck. I hope you guys are having a great day, afternoon, and or evening whenever you guys are seeing this. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today, right? Today, the true crime story that I will be sharing with you all is about the Kray twins. Now, these twins were notorious for all kind of criminal activity in South England, East England, and on the west side where they dominated. If you guys want to hear the information that I put together, all you guys got to do, stay tuned. All right, thank you guys so much for coming back. I appreciate that. Now, I don't know where you guys are and what part of the world that you guys are watching your girl from today, but I'd like you guys to light up the comments and let me know where you guys tuning in from. I'd love to know that. I'm currently in California, Sunshine State, and it is raining outside. I do love the rain, but I don't want it all the time, but it has been raining a lot out this way lately. So anyhow, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this true crime. Now, I have notes, as you guys know. I always read from my notes because it's a lot to uncover here. It's like an onion. It has layers, you guys, okay? And I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys a story as I researched it and everything that I've come to find about it. All right, now let's jump into some background information. So, Reginald and Ronnie Kray were born on October the 24th, 1933, in Haggerton, East London, and they were identical twins who were 10 minutes apart. Do you guys at home know any twins? And if you do, how far are they apart? You might be a twin yourself watching this, and if so, how far apart are you and your twin? Now, from my knowledge, 10 minutes is quite the distance. A lot of twins are, 3 minutes, 7 minutes, 5 minutes. 10 minutes is quite a distance, but they were identical twins. Now, their parents was a gentleman by the name of Charles Davis Kray. He was a wardrobe dealer. Now, the type of wardrobe dealer that their father was is he sold used clothes. So he was known to go look around. Like, for instance, you guys know how like department stores, they throw out things if they get snags or if it's not necessarily out of season, but they have a certain time of the year where they will just throw a whole bunch of stuff that didn't meet the cut in the dumpster in the back of the store. Now, these days, I believe they lock those dumpsters. I don't know if they did that back then, but there's shows all over YouTube and different things on Netflix, like specials where they do things called dumpster diving, where people actually jump into those dumpsters and take out things because it can be brand new clothes with tags on it. Now, I don't know if it was the same thing in 1933 when Charles was doing this, but he would go and he would get stuff that was discarded either in the back of department stores and he'd resell it. Now, it wasn't just department stores. He was getting stuff off the street too, because the neighbors and the community people, they kind of referred to him as kind of like the junk man or the garbage man. Now, because it took place in England, they would say like rubbish. He's picking up rubbish, which essentially to us is trash. But so they said that he had a wardrobe. He was a wardrobe dealer. Now, the twins' mother was a woman by the name of Violet Annie Lee. Okay, she was a stay-at-home mother, and she took care, of the family. Now, the twins had a brother by the name of Charles Jr. He was 6 years old when the twins were just first born. There was a sister in the picture. However, the records show that she passed away in her infancy. So before, she never made it from being an infant. She passed away. And it was really common during that era that kids would pass away at a very early age. It was considered actually rare per household if the parent did not lose at least one kid by the time the kid came out on up to, let's say, what we consider elementary school or something else like that. Like the mortality rate of kids were like really, really, it just wasn't there. So it was actually really common for kids to perish very, very soon at that time. Now, the mother, I thought this was interesting about the mother. So the twins' mother, Violet, right? She's an interesting woman. She's a home mother. She dotes on her kids. She's very loving and attentive to the twins. So much so that the community and the neighbors, I think they kind of had an envious streak of her because the twins, they defied the odds for the children out there. People fully expected one of them to perish by the time they, got up to, elementary, middle school, high school. But when neither of them did, initially the community looked at the mother as like, oh, she's some kind of a superwoman. What Midas touch does she have where she was able to raise not just two kids, not just two of her sons, but remember they have an older brother named Charles, right? And he was fine the whole time too. Now they did, they said like one in every household. They did have a sister who did not make the cut. So they did have a sister who passed when she was just an infant. But between the three boys, all of them, they grew up and they were totally fine. I don't. At some point, it kind of sounds as if the community expected one of the twins to die. Like they were almost like, oh, well, she's not going to keep both of those twins. One of them certainly has to perish. But when it didn't happen, oddly enough, she became somewhat of a local celebrity. Like people said, oh, that's Violet. She's the one who has the twins. Both of them, they both are living. They're both in good health, So she was a celebrity. And then it was also like reported like down the line that like the community kind of felt like Violet almost had like an overinflated ego. Like she walked with her chest stuck out and her head up, like, as if she was a part of the upper echelon, because she was blessed. And keep in mind, all kids are a blessing, okay? All of our children. And I think all parents essentially should feel like their kids are, the top of the food chain, the greatest gift from God and all of that. But this lady, she kind of took it far, okay? She was putting her kids up on a pedestal when she walked in the grocery store. I'm the mother of the twins. I'm Violet. She just had this real appeal about her where she was totally claiming it and just eating up all the attention that she got from that. Now, there was reports that, then so of course people begin to speculate, right? We know how people are. They start all that. First, the whole crowd's with you, but when they're against you, they're all against you. Kind of like that mentality. So then down the line, as Violet, would be going about, there was a lot of chatter. And while the boys were in school, they were saying, it was rumors passing that there was an abnormal relationship between Violet and the twins, Ronnie and Reginald. But really, I know that there are things that are considered abnormal, but the fact that she was just doting on her kids and she was really telling them, that you guys are the best. You guys are extra special. You guys are not ordinary kids. I don't think that there was anything wrong with that. I think a lot of people may have added a lot extra to that and saying, oh, she's putting her kids on a pedestal. She's making them believe that they're better than everybody else because they're twins and because they survived. I can't say that was necessarily the worst thing. I just think that a lot of people in the community, they put a whole lot extra on that. Now, other kids, the twins' age said that they thought the kids acted abnormal. But let's put this in context here. If you are an identical twin, then most of the times identical twins will really be each other's best friend. They'll have their own language. They'll have their own understanding that people outside of them won't necessarily understand, in all fairness, right? That doesn't mean that they're just so out there in space. It's just their own. You wouldn't understand it necessarily unless you were in that dynamic, right? So they even had a cousin, this guy who they went to school with, and he made, all kind of statements, but he was saying, yeah, the twins act very abnormal. They talk in a weird language that only they can understand. And I can't say that it was really weird. Just because you don't understand it, I can't say it's weird. You're just not supposed to understand it. It's not like really for you to understand. So at that time, it was just a lot of speculation about what was considered abnormal relationships. I think that the other parents who did not have twins, there may have been a touch of envy there. They were just not happy that Violet was so happy that she was the one who had these twins. And not only were they twins, but they were healthy and they both survived childhood. So there was a lot of controversy around that a bit. However, Violet she held her head up high and she was very grateful to have her sons, all three of them, okay? The oldest son, Charles, as well. Now, so while all this is going on, she's in her community and she's living her best life and she's enjoying, being the proud mother of healthy twin boys, okay? Her husband, Charles Sr., he's a wanderer, you guys. He starts to travel so far, picking up this discarded clothes and other household items that he could sell, that he even went to I think it was the east side of England that he went to. And while he was at the east side of England, he was living like a nomadic lifestyle. He was traveling, they didn't have cell phones back then, right? So the only way he can get a message to his wife was by, a house phone, and whenever he can get to one, because people was just not going to let Charles Sr. come in their house and use their house phone, while he's picking up a whole bunch of what they would refer to as rubbish. They don't want him necessarily in the house using the house phone. So anyhow, he would be, picking up all this stuff, and he would just be wandering around. It's like, okay, Charles, you got 3 kids at home and a wife. You are the head of the household, so you technically should be at home raising your kids, and instead of wandering around picking up stuff. Now, essentially he was bringing in money, but the value of that money wasn't very much, okay? Because remember, the stuff that he was picking up was secondhand, it was discarded, and some of the stuff he would have to bring back to a reasonable appearance where he could even, sell the stuff legitimately. Now, a lot of the people said in the south side of England where he was wandering off to, they said that he spent a lot of his time in the pub. Now, for the, Americans, the pub is the bar. He was spending a lot of his time at the bar. They said he had a sweet tooth for the bar, okay? So, it turned into a thing where a lot of the money that Charles was earning, he was spending the proceeds at the bar. So, the money became less and less that he was taking back to Violet and the boys, although they desperately needed it because, they needed to survive as well. But he, Charles, decided to put himself a little bit first there and just decided to kind of do his own thing. Now, so while all this stuff is going on, right? There's the chatter within the community. There's the chatter between their own family with cousins and aunts and everything else about, oh, look how Violet's treating the twins. And where's Charles at anyways? Oh, he's probably at the pub again, It's all that, kind of bickering stuff going on. Now, while that stuff is going on, shortly thereafter, it was World War II. And Charles Sr., he was drafted to have to be in the army. He was supposed to be in the army. They said, Charles, you're up. Come on. It's time for the army. It's the British Army, okay? He was drafted to serve in the British Army during World War II. So he went, okay? They called him and he went. But after just a short while, he decided that it just wasn't for him. So he left. He just dipped, okay? Now, that's considered AWOL. You can't just leave the army when you're drafted, okay? If you decide that you don't feel like it anymore, you're not supposed to just walk away. Well, Charles, he decided he didn't feel like it, so what did he do? He walked away, gave him the peace sign, and continued to live a nomadic lifestyle. Okay. Now, this went on for 15 years. Charles was actually a fugitive from the army for 15 years. From the next 15 years, he was a fugitive. He went AWOL, and I don't know how they couldn't catch up with him in 15 years, you guys. I mean, just to be honest, if there's anybody who's ever been in the army, the military, or the Navy, you guys light up the comments and let me know what your thoughts is on this. So if you go AWOL from the army, they have to look for you, right? They put out APB out on you to say if anybody sees you, bring them in immediately? Because I know that this was 1933, but at the same time, how did he go missing for 15 years and no one ever saw him? But then again, he was living a very nomadic lifestyle, which means it's not like he was going home to go to sleep. He wasn't going home. He was falling out in the pubs or by a bench or something else, and he was picking through discarded items to see what he could sell. So it's not like he had a stable location. So in all fairness, that might have made it a little bit more interesting to kind of pinpoint him and locate him. Excuse me. So I don't know, but he was missing for 15 years. But if there's anybody in the service watching this, light up the comments and weigh in, okay? So Charles, he was finally arrested in 1954. And before he was arrested, though, it was also reported that throughout that whole 15-year time that he was a fugitive, he would only pop in and see Violet and the boys sporadically, once a blue moon. Like, at this point in his life, they were not a priority for him for whatever reason. It's like he just took out on the run. And before, keep in mind, he was always wandering around anyhow. So aside of that, it became even less as he went on the run from the army, because he kind of like just discarded, oh, well, he would pop in once a blue moon sporadically. And it was so irregular for them to the point where, initially the boys, yay, dad, they may have felt like Christmas, we get to see our dad again. And then after that, it turned to something like, oh, he's here, huh? Well, he shouldn't be that long. I guess we'll get back to living our life after he's gone. You guys know how it is when you have a parent who's mostly absent in your life, and then they play the disappearing acts where they show up, you're initially excited, thinking, great, we're going to do something with life, and then it doesn't work like that. And so you guys just, you just go back to your life initially and just say like, oh, okay, well, I guess it is what it is. That was his relationship with the twins, right? Now, luckily, and I say luckily because I feel like all kids need like somebody they can look up to, an authority figure, some kind of a guidance or, some kind of an influence, right? Luckily for the twins, they had a maternal grandfather named Cannonball Lee. Now, he influenced the twins to take up amateur boxing, which was good for them because the twins, they kind of had like anger issues going on with them, right? And this started at a very young age. They kind of had some anger issues and some attention issues going on. So their grandfather, Cannonball, when he told them to take up amateur boxing, I think it was in an effort to kind of help them to kind of let out their emotions in a productive way is what I want to say. I think that was the purpose of that, right? So initially the twins, they did well. Both of them had some good points, some good victories in amateur boxing. People were like, okay, they could have some promising careers with training and discipline and all that. That was definitely on the table for the twins, right? But they did say that the twin, Ronnie, he was considered to be the more aggressive twin, okay? And amongst twins, there's always somebody who's more aggressive. There's always somebody who's a little bit more passive. There's always, and then there's always like whatever differences you can think about with twins, there's always, it's always the opposites, right? So Ronnie, in this case, he was definitely the more aggressive of the two. Reports say that he was constantly getting into street fights when he was a teenager. So it's like he had almost like, Ronnie, I don't think he was so strong mentally, and I think he had almost like a chip on his shoulder. And as I get into this more so you guys will see, well, he definitely had like not just a chip on his shoulder, but there was a lot going on for him mentally, okay? So he would take the way he felt out on people very aggressively, okay? And so he just got into a lot of fights and he just stayed into a lot of trouble as a teenager. Now, a British scholar named Jonathan Rabin, he once wrote that Ronnie has a low IQ, right? But he was an avid reader. Now, Rabin, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Rabin, attributed the reason for Ronnie's aggression stemmed from him being a bisexual teen who had to hide his sexual tendencies. Now, you guys keep in mind, I've already said the year a couple times that all this story has taken place. Now, so I'm not sure how this scholar, Jonathan, I'm not sure how he found this out. And I think he's probably writing about this in a past tense form, like as he knew about the twins' lives later on in life, that Ronnie, he was so aggressive because not only did he have stuff going on at home, remember his father, Charles, was missing, it was just a lot going on at home. They kind of had to do their own thing. They wasn't living necessarily the silver spoon life anyway. So they were living kind of, day-to-day type environment in a very poor environment, So it wasn't the best of life. So all that stuff was going on while they were being developed, right? Okay, so, and then he had these feelings, Ronnie, he had these feelings that he didn't quite understand about him being bisexual, but it was not socially acceptable at that time. Now, I think the year we're in 2023, this year and like the past, few years down have been the most accepting years of, the LGBTQ community. But for way back then, there was no acceptance. There was no understanding. The people back then, had this feeling about them as if, if a person identified as bisexual or gay, that something was wrong with them. Something had to be mentally ill with them, and it just wasn't acceptable. It was frowned upon. So he had all these feelings that were bottled up inside of him that he couldn't really let out. So one of the places that he took those feelings out was in the boxing ring, which was good for him because it was good for him to have an outlet to kind of, express himself. So anyhow, in March 1952, the Krays, they were called, in March 1952, the twins, okay, Reginald and Ronnie Kray, they were called to do national service, guess what, in the British military. Now, you guys remember their father, how he felt about the military, how he acted, right? Well, 1952, they called the twins and said, well, it's your time to serve. It is your time to serve. And let me just say this, the apples did not fall far from the tree, because when it was their turn to serve in the military, they went and they reported to base. But as soon as they got there, they decided this was not for them. And what did they do? They turned around and tried to leave, right? However, there was a colonel who was in charge, and he tried to stop them from leaving. He was like, hey, guys, wait a minute, chill, have a seat. You guys can't just leave. You just got here. You guys got to do this thing, right? You signed up. So Ronnie, the more aggressive of the twin, he quickly took his fist and punched the colonel so hard that he broke his jaw. And the guy, the guy called in a whole bunch of a very painful injury for the guy. And the guy was like, "What the? This kid he's crazy." And then after they did that, they calmly walked away, walked right off that military base, and they went, guess what? Straight home. They walked off the military base, and for some odd reason, they thought they should just go straight home and have a nice nap. Well, the next day, the military police politely came and got them right out of that house and took them straight back to the military. But this was only the beginning of the twins' trouble in that military, okay? It was only the beginning. So in September 1952, the twins went AWOL again, and they assaulted a police officer who tried to stop them. So again, they said, nope, don't want to be here, tried it, and we hate it. A police officer said, hey, no, what are you doing? What are you guys doing? You guys have to go back. And they assaulted the police officer. Now, the twins were arrested, and then they were taken to jail. Now, they were eventually dishonorably discharged from the Army, and reports suggest their behavior became even worse. Now, before they were discharged from the Army, when they went to jail, well, this is not this when they went in the military jail. When they were in the military jail, these twins were so rowdy and they were so wound up that they were not only fighting. So there was a report that they took a handcuff and they took a guard and they handcuffed the guard to the cell, and then they threw feces in his face. Okay. And they started beating him with washcloths. Other reports said that they were so rowdy that they were taking their own blankets and sheets and setting them to fire. And then, of course, when it was time to get exercise out in the weight area, when people lift the weights for the exercise, they were so aggressive out there trying to hit people with the weights that people were scared to even come out there while they were out there. They was like, you know what? We're not dealing with them crazy ass twins today. We're not going to go to the weight room, let them get all aggressive with the weights. They basically had the floor to themselves because people were absolutely intimidated. You guys light up the comments and let me know, have you guys heard of this story or anything similar to this before? I really want to know what you guys' opinion is on this. Now, when it was time for the twins to leave, the guards were happy to see them go. They was like, thank God, get them out of here. Never bring them back to this ward, because, and then also it was only so much that the guards could do back in retaliation, or no, not could, would, because we know guards go wild if they want to, but it's only so much that they would do back, retaliating on these twins, although they were aggressive times 100. They had no chill in regards to the level that they would go, but the guards will censor themselves in regards to how they would get them back, which is interesting. But it's also the legal way, right? They shouldn't be doing that. But anyhow, so the guards were happy to see them go. And hold on, let me get my other notes up here. So the twins, they were transferred to a civilian jail to complete the remainder of their sentence for going AWOL. And then, but now here's the interesting part. Now, before they were released, the prison psychiatrist who examined Ronnie found him to be subnormal. This psychiatrist said that he was psychopathic, schizophrenic, and insane. So she did her recommendation of them. She said, you know what? This twin right here, the other one is bad too, but this one, he's all out, as they would say, batshit crazy. He is completely crazy. You guys are rating him, or you guys are treating him as if he is somebody who would be considered normal. He is not, by no stretch of the imagination. There's a lot going on with him, and he does not see things in a way that a standard, and I hate using the word normal because really what's normal, but a standard / normal person would do them. He did not see things like that. So she put that in her report all those years ago. So also, when they were dishonorably discharged from the military, their amateur boxing career ended as well. They was like, okay, you know what, you're discharged dishonorably. You guys, we're not working with you anymore. You're too aggressive and too dangerous. That's it. Excuse me. So when they lost when they couldn't do amateur boxing anymore, they really became aggressive then. If they weren't already aggressive and already wound up, they were completely wound up then, because they felt like, you know what, forget it. We have no other legal outlet. We'll just have to do other things, right? So they decided to commit crimes full time from that point on. Now, the twins, they then bought a pool club and they started several protection for hire groups by the end of the 1950s. So basically, the twins were like, they were, what do you like, bodyguards, like not protection for hire. So you think bodyguards, you think, yeah, bodyguards. They had like a firm, an underground firm that was basically, hey, we'll rip somebody's head off if they pay the right money. If we're in bed with the right people, we'll rip their head off to get the right money we'll do whatever it takes to make things happen. Now, it should also be said that during that time, let's see, hold on, there was something. They also signed on with, let's see, so they started their protection groups, and then they began working for an established gangster by the name of J. Murray. This is where they participated and did a whole bunch of armed robberies, hijackings, and arsons. They were setting it off in where is this, in Europe? They were setting it off in Europe, okay? Those twins had it so hot that people were scared to hear their names, to see them coming, because they knew they meant bad news. Okay, that's what time it was. Now, in the 1960s, Ronnie, the more aggressive twin, he was arrested and sentenced to 18 months for running one of the protection clubs. So one of the protection clubs, it's like the people, somehow somebody reported it, which people were actually scared to do during that time, but he was arrested. They arrested him, but they only gave him 18 months. And out of the 18 months, that doesn't mean that he actually stayed in jail the entire 18 months. It just means that's what his, that's what his sentence was, I guess, which wasn't a long time for having a protection club, because you have to keep in mind what that protection club means. It means if I pay you to go over there and shut my my rival's business down, you'll do that. If that means you have to set it on fire, if that means you have to beat him with a bat, if that means you have to blind them, it doesn't matter. You're going to do whatever you're paid to do. And that's what he was doing. So to only get 18 months for such vicious, violent crimes, that seems like a slap on the wrist, wouldn't you say? Now, light up the comments and let me know what you guys think about that. I don't really think that the time fit the crime, but okay. Now, during that time where Ronnie was locked up, the twin Reggie, he bought a nightclub called ESMERALDA'S Barn. Now, this increased the twins' influence in the West End. The purchase of this particular club, it also made the twins celebrities. That right there was like the straw that kind of pushed them from regular, like kind of, down low criminals all the way up into celebrities. They became celebrities for this. All of a sudden, everybody knew their name. All of a sudden, people were looking at them as if they were idols. People considered them like the Al Capones, who do you say? Like they were celebrities. People were very fond of the twins. They had some way made their way into Hollywood, and all they had did was beat the hell out of people, stole their stuff, arson, hijacked, murder for hire. They did all these things, but somehow they were celebrities. After the purchase of that club, it kind of solidified their reputation, and they were seen as like heroes of sorts, okay? In the 1960s, yeah, the twins, they were considered charming celebrities. They did own several nightclubs, a lot of which they actually muscled people out of. It's not like they just acquired these clubs all on their own. No, they were muscling people out of the clubs. The people were terrified, and they were signing over these clubs to get them off their back because they didn't want the problem. They didn't want the smoke. So they actually acquired a lot of their clubs through brute force. Okay, violence, reckless violence, okay? They were running a criminal ring that was so outlandish that people, even the police at that time, they were scared to touch it. They was like, oh no, this is too deep. Is it about them crazy ass Kray Twins? Don't call us until it's over then, because they didn't want no part in it. And speaking of police, of course, they had a lot of police in their pockets as well, okay? Now, the interesting thing is, a lot of the people who considered the twins to be very popular at that time, they believed that the twins had the normal rags to riches story, right? Now, we all love a good rags to riches story. Somebody who started from the bottom, now they're here. Somebody who was in poverty all their life, but they made good decisions. They didn't give up on themselves. They kept going. They persevered. We all love a good story like that, right? Well, that was no different back then. They loved a good story like that too. And a lot of the people who were supporting them and had a lot of admiration for them, well, they just believed that the twins dug themselves out of the gutter and now they were here. But that wasn't the case. They didn't know that these were hardened criminals, that they were busting people's heads and backs to get to where they were, that they were robbing Peter and Paul, to get to where they were. They just believed that it happened a different way. Now, the twins, they enjoyed the limelight. Oh, they had a good time in the limelight, honey. They were actually rubbing elbows with people like Frank Sinatra. Okay, they have pictures with Frank Sinatra and other well-known celebrities at that time. They would be inviting people to the clubs, and they would, they'd be having drinks with them. Okay, they would be wining and dining. These people having a good old-fashioned time. Now, also interestingly enough, the twins were also giving back very generously to charity. Well, while people could see it, that is. They were, oh, okay, we're going to donate to this fund. They were shaking hands with mayors. They were, saluting hats to, A-listers, celebrities, and everything else like that. So they were living quite the life, right? You would think that somebody had worked really hard, or they had some really good connections or something else, and then now they've arrived. They were living the life as if somebody who had arrived, who had not done all this criminal activity and so on and so forth, but in fact they had. Now, so in the 1950s and 60s, I've already told you guys when it was considered really abnormal to be gay. Reports suggest that so in the 1950s and 60s, when it was just not popular to be gay, the particular twin, the more aggressive one, Ronnie, he was often seen flaunting his sexuality around amongst the people in the clubs and in the neighborhood. So he would see a little bad bae, somebody he was interested in. He would tell him, come here. He would be with Ronnie. He was a piece of work. Okay, he was okay. Come on, dance for me. Turn that thing around. So he had people turning around in a circle and everything else. Now the people were not happy about this, because it's always when somebody has their own static beliefs about what's good, what's bad, what's normal, what's not, or whatever. It was just so taboo, stuff like that. So people, they were really upset, and they were gritting their teeth. There was people who was there was other gangsters who was supposed to be in bed with him for different money laundering, whatever the case was, murder for hire, all that other stuff. And they were looking at him with a side eye, like, are you sure that's how you want to move? Yeah, he was sure that's how he wanted to move, but it was not approved by the people. Now, Reggie, the other twin, he was reportedly heterosexual, but people close to him recalled that he had a boyfriend when he was a teenager. And then, in addition, they said, Reggie only had one female who was supposed to be his girlfriend, and their relationship was very short-lived. So, see, there was a lot of speculation about whether Reggie was heterosexual as well. And for whatever reason, it played a whole bunch of weight back then, okay? Because these guys were really brutal gangsters. And people, I guess they don't associate really brutal gangsters with homosexuality. I don't know why, because I don't think it matters, how vicious or violent you are. I think anybody's always going to sleep with whoever they want to. So anyways, so that brother, he was also believed to be gay, but he was putting on an image, okay, that he was not, because the relationship that he had with that girl was short-lived, but he later was said to have married a woman. Now, this was much later in life. He married a woman, but it was also reported that they never consummated their marriage. So to me, it seems more like a situation of convenience or for appearance, if you guys follow me, right? But the other twin, he was the polar opposite, the more violent one. He was out, he was loud, he was proud, and I don't think he was flamboyant, though. I don't think he was flamboyant at all because of his gangster-like reputation, but he was out, he made it known. He likes who he likes, and that's on period, okay? So as time went on, there were several murders tied to the twins, okay? However, one of the most notable was when Ronnie, the more aggressive twin, he killed a man named George Cornell. Now, this happened on March the 9th, 1966. Now, it was said that there was a shootout in one of the twins' club the night before. So it was a shootout the night before. Why was there a shootout? Because they was always living gangster lifestyles. So if you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul, it's only so many people going to let you crack their back in their head or their family back in head before they turn around and start trying to crack yours too, right? It's only so many doors you can kick in before someone tries to kick in your door. So naturally, there was back and forth, aggression and violence that was going to happen at that time, right? So anyhow, the day before the twin Ronnie shot this guy, George, right? It was a shootout. Now, one of Ronnie's really close friends or associates, I say or associates because a lot of reports said that the twins didn't have any friends besides themselves. They didn't never consider anybody else their friends. Everybody else was just associates. So a close guy to Ronnie, he was killed by a rival gang. Now the rival gang was called the Richardson gang. They actually killed one of Ronnie's friends the night before. Now the leader of the Richardson gang is a guy by the name of George Cornell. Okay, so just about all of the Richardson gang, they were arrested after Ronnie's friend was killed. Just about everybody went to jail, right? Except the leader. The leader being who? George, right? So Ronnie was out one night at a nightclub, right? And somebody came and they told him, little birdie told him a message. Hey, you know that dude George? Yeah, you know the one George who killed your homie? Yeah, well, he's right over there at that pub over there. And he was like, oh, yeah? Oh, thank you for the information. He went ahead and had a last sip of his drink. He got right on up with one of his associates. He went over to the pub, and then, I would say broad daylight. It wasn't broad daylight. It was just at the time of the day it was, where the bar was crowded, so many people, whatever else. He pulled out his gun and shot him in the head right then and there, right? Now, this is a cold gangster. Now, before he shot him, the guy who he shot, George, when he turned around and he seen that Ronnie was there, right? He was like, oh, nice to see ya. That was the last words he said before he got shot and killed, right? So then Ronnie shoots him in the head right then and there. And he was just standing there looking at him, watching him die, watching breath leave his life, not going nowhere. Now people in the cup start screaming, ah! People are screaming, running like, oh my God, you guys see what he did? He just blew somebody's brains out. Now the associate who was with him, he took his gun out and he shoots 5 times in the air. Everybody gets scared. They duck in their head. They run in, everybody ducking and running like, oh my God, they shoot everybody. And you listen up. Okay. He was like, has anybody seen anything? No, I see nothing. And that's the way it better stay. And everybody, And then they politely strolled off and politely went right back to that other pub and continued to drink their drinks. So this is how Ronnie was. In his mind, he didn't give a hot damn. If you told him that there was a problem, he was the solution. He was going to go do it right then and there. And he didn't care who was around. Now, but when Ronnie took this action, it really did upset some of the other mafia members because, what they was like, hey, you guys are doing good over here. You guys holding down the east side, and we like the way you guys handling things. It's been very prosperous for everybody. But we need you to keep your hands clean. You could have sent somebody less, a little lieutenant to do that. Never the man himself should ever get his hands dirty like that in broad daylight. Like, what's up with this, right? So anyways, he told, he was telling the head, mafia dudes, I understand what you're saying and everything else like that. It was just something that had to be done. It had to be done right then and there. And it was like, okay, well, we understand. Don't let that happen again. Don't let something like that happen again. So the head mafia guys, they was able to kind of quiet the community, if you know what I mean, because people were terrified to talk. Okay, they knew just how vicious that the twins were. Ronnie being the most vicious of them all, he didn't give a hot damn. So they were able to quiet the community and the police, if you know what I mean, because they was able to quiet the police too. People were scared to talk to them, you guys, right? Now, fate started changing, and let me tell you how. Now, so after they killed him, I forgot to tell you guys another thing about the guy, George. Not only did his gang kill Ronnie's friend the day before, but it was said that, according to some sources, Ronnie also killed George because he referred to him as a fat poof. This was on Christmas Day in 1965. So George called Ronnie a fat poof, which enraged Ronnie because that was supposed to be, I guess, that was supposed to be an epithet for people of the LGBTQ community. So he called him that. That was another thing that had him. So he already had some stuff against him, okay? He was thinking, okay, I'm going to have to go ahead and lullaby him. If his disrespect is ridiculous. But aside of that disrespectful thing, I guess he decided to, he didn't like it, but he let it go. But the straw that broke the camel's back is when his homeboy got killed the day before by his gang members. So that was it. That was like, that's it. Okay, what did they say? The gloves come off or the gloves come on, however the saying goes. So that was something else I forgot to tell you guys. Now, the Wheel of Fortune comes here because it's time for the tables to turn on this thing. On May 8th, 1968, the twins and 15 members of their organization were all arrested. Boom. Okay, now keep in mind they had been committing murders, arson, burglary, theft, hijacking, all this other stuff. They had been doing this stuff for years, you guys, excuse me. And they were rather successful. But they were finally arrested in 1968, right? Problem is that most of the people were too terrified to testify against the twins, and the ones who were not too terrified to testify against them, they didn't have the most important information. They had some information, but it wasn't the most important information that can get them to serve life in prison, right? On August 11th, 1982, while the twins were still in prison, their mother, Violet, died. Okay, now she died of cancer. Now keep in mind, their mother adored them. She put them on all kind of pedestals. They were BFFs. Okay, and it was once reported that when people were saying, why do you, about the strange relationship, about the relationship they felt was strange between the twins and their mother, that Ronnie said, well, between my mother and my brother, that's really all I need in this world. I really don't need nobody else. So that's how really close that the twins and the mother was. So while they were still in prison, Violet, she actually died of cancer. Okay. Now the twins, they were allowed to attend their mother's funeral. And while they were allowed to attend her funeral, and celebrities also attended the funeral, as if their mother was a celebrity, as a byproduct of them being some underworld celebrities that turned into real life celebrities. Like, this is very odd, right? So there were celebrities there. They were there. There was underground people who were still knee deep, thick in the game. They were there. They were all there with the twins to attend their mother's funeral. Now, just a year later, so their mother died in August 1982. Okay, the next year, in March 1983, the twins' father, he also passed away. But the twins didn't ask to leave the prison to go to that funeral because they wanted to avoid additional publicity that has surrounded their mother's funeral. So it's like they said, well, our mother just died. We don't want to, the year later our father died. We don't want any more publicity on our family, because I think at this point, like, realization is you didn't bring really honor, because there was a lot of shame associated with that. Okay, so they didn't attend their father's funeral. In 1978, the really aggressive twin, Ronnie, he was officially certified as insane. Keep in mind, years ago, the psychiatrist in prison had already said he was insane, but it took until 1979 for them to officially certify him and say, yes, we agree, he is absolutely insane. Now, the rest of his sentence was, I don't know how you say the correct lingo, but he stopped his sentence at the prison, and then they transferred him to a full-time mental health facility where he had to live the rest of his life. And it's called the Bradmore Hospital in England. It's a mental health facility. That's where he lived the remainder of his life after that, was there. Now, Reggie, the other twin, he ended up dying from terminal cancer. This was after he was released from prison on October 1st, 2000. Now, during his incarceration, it's reported that he turned his life over to God and he became a full-time Christian. He gave his life to Christ. He became a Christian, okay, before he passed away. Now, Charlie Kray, which was the twins' brother, who was 6 years older than him, he was originally released from prison in 1979. Keep in mind, you guys, in case I haven't told you, Charlie was just as bad as the twins, okay? I think he used the twins' influence and became horrible, but he was just as bad as them, okay? He was doing all kind of things. He was doing hitman work too, okay? So he was not innocent at all. But anyway, so he was released from prison in 1975. After he was released, he later returned to prison and served an additional 12-year sentence in 1997 for conspiracy to smuggle cocaine. Now, on October 4th, 2000, Charlie himself, he died in prison of natural causes. He was 72 years old. Reggie, who was still alive at that time, right? He was still living at the time, and his twin was already in the mental home. And then his brother, he had just died in prison, and he was still alive, right? So he was allowed out of the prison to attend his older brother Charlie's funeral. Charlie, his name is Charlie, to attend his older brother Charlie's funeral. But after he did attend the funeral, just 6 months later, he himself passed away. Okay. All right, you guys, that was a lot with the Kray twins, right? Absolutely notorious gangsters tearing stuff up in England, the east side, the west side. Their influence was absolutely terrifying to the residents. And I'm sure that when they were done, they left a mark that would not easily be forgotten. You guys light up the comments and let me know what you guys thought about this true crime. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you guys have story suggestions or ideas, go ahead and hit me up either on Instagram or send me an email. I'll have all that information in my description. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Like I always say, there's always another story to be told. But for now,